Hey everyone. Thanks for joining the Unveiled family. We're almost halfway to our goal, and it's all thanks to you. If you haven't yet, please smash that subscribe button so that we can hit 1,000 subs together. Let's do this. So, I met this guy Samuel on some app I barely use. It was one of those nights where I couldn't sleep, and I just started swiping like I was half conscious. I didn't even remember matching with him until he messaged the next day. He wasn't anything special looks-wise, kinda had that tired office guy face, but his messages were funny. Like actual funny, not hey funny. He sent this weird meme about ferrets fighting over pizza or something, and I don't know, it hit me right. So when he asked if I wanted to go out, I said yes. He picked a comedy club, some basement spot under a sandwich shop downtown. I'd never been to one before, so I figured why not. It sounded low pressure, lots of noise, dark corners, and not a fancy restaurant where you have to smile while chewing. I took the train there, got there early, and waited outside. He was 10 minutes late. Not a red flag or anything, just annoying. When he showed up, he was wearing this wrinkled button-up that looked like it had been sitting in his car for a week. I told myself to let it go. Inside was actually kinda cool. Small, dim lights, mismatched chairs, a low stage, and people already drinking and laughing like they were regulars. I ordered a beer, and he got this huge cocktail with a little plastic monkey hanging off it. He laughed and said the monkey reminded him of his cousin who got arrested in Mexico. I didn't even know how to respond to that. The first comedian came up. This woman in a silver jacket, with hair like a poodle, and she was hilarious. Crowd was loving it. Samuel, not so much. I noticed right away he wasn't laughing. Not even fake polite laughs. He just stared. I thought maybe he was nervous or didn't get the jokes. Then he leaned toward me and muttered something about how women aren't actually funny. I sort of laughed it off, thinking he was being sarcastic, but nope. He kept going, saying she was loud, annoying, repeating stuff, and that he could do better than. During her bit about her dad being obsessed with his boat, Samuel just yells out this weird bark of a laugh and says something like, "Try harder," loud. The whole table next to us went quiet. She stopped, looked right at him, then smiled. She pointed at him and asked if that was his attempt at participating. The crowd laughed. He smiled like he was in on the joke. But she didn't stop. She started asking if he always looked like a substitute teacher who got fired for yelling at the microwave. Then she called him shiny shirt and said he looked like a banana that got stepped on in a parking lot. She just kept going, escalating, and the audience was eating it up. I laughed. Everyone laughed except him. His face turned this shade of pink that looked almost fake, like melted ham or something. He tried to yell back something about her voice being annoying, but it didn't even make sense. She talked right over him, said he had the energy of a man who screams at printers. She told the crowd he looked like a spreadsheet if it was sad. I could feel him tensing next to me, like stiff. His shoulders locked up and his hands started drumming this insane rhythm on the table. I whispered for him to chill, but he was locked in. She moved on eventually, but the crowd kept looking at us, at him. I thought maybe he'd recover, maybe laugh at himself or fake a smile. But he just sat there, rigid. He didn't say anything until the next act came on. And even then, his voice was small, like barely there. He asked if I wanted to leave. I said we could after this one. Mostly because I was curious what he'd do next. Part of me hoped he'd forget it, laugh it off, but that's not what happened. He started muttering, not jokes, like angry mumbles. I couldn't make it out, but I heard the word dumb a few times. The guy on stage was doing impressions and Samuel was just staring at his shoes. Then he muttered something and stood up suddenly, knocking over his drink. That plastic monkey flew across the room and landed in someone's fries. Everyone turned. He Stood there, red-faced and shaking, then just sat down again. Didn't say anything. Just stared straight ahead, like nothing happened. The table next to us asked if we were okay, and he didn't even blink. By the time the show ended, I was more than ready to leave. I stood up, grabbed my bag, told him I was heading out. He followed, silent. Outside, I expected him to say something, anything, but he just stood there, staring at the ground like it was personally responsible for everything. Then he started, crying, not like wiping out away crying, full-on ugly sobbing, hunched over like he'd been shot in the soul. People walking past actually slowed down. It was awkward and loud, and I didn't know what to do. I just stood there frozen, hoping maybe someone would step in. He kept saying. She embarrassed him, over and over. Said this night ruined everything. That it was supposed to be special. That I was supposed to be different. He used that word a lot different. I told him I had to go. That I had an early shift. Total lie. I just couldn't stand there anymore. He grabbed my wrist not hard, but firm and asked if I thought it was funny too. I didn't answer. Just looked at him until he let go. Then I turned and left without looking back. He messaged me that night. Just one long block of text, no punctuation. Talking about how he'd been made into a joke, and how he hoped I was happy and how cruel people were. Said he couldn't believe he let someone in again. Whatever that meant, I didn't reply. Next morning, he sent a meme of a guy walking into the ocean. Still didn't reply. He kept sending weird stuff after that. Screenshots of comedy club reviews. Photos of his face from weird angles. One of just his shirt on the floor with the caption, "Won't need this anymore." I blocked him after that. Never went back to that club again either. Not because of the show. That part was actually amazing. But now, whenever someone suggests a comedy night for a first date, all I see is that stupid plastic monkey, mid-air, and a grown man crying like the world ended because someone told a better joke. So this happened last fall, like right after I got out of a weird situationship that left my brain feeling like it had been put through a dishwasher. I wasn't even looking to date anyone seriously, but I figured whatever, might as well go on a few dates and try to reset my head. I matched with this girl named Laura on some app that no one really admits they use. Her photos were kinda basic, but she had this look that made me stop scrolling, like confident in a way that felt deliberate. Her bio just said drinks and chaos, which should have been enough of a clue. We talked for a bit, nothing deep. It was mostly memes and some sarcastic back and forth. She asked if I liked dive bars, or if I was one of those people who needed ambient lighting and candles, just to sip a beer. I said dive bars were fine, which I didn't actually mean. I usually hate sticky floors and bathrooms with flickering lights, but I wasn't trying to sound soft. So we agreed to meet at this bar downtown on a Friday. The bar was one of those places that somehow smells like barbecue sauce, even though no food's being served. It had these low ceilings, and a crowd that looked like they either just got off work or were trying hard not to go home. I showed up like 10 minutes early because I didn't want to be the one walking in all wide-eyed trying to find her. I sat at the far end of the bar, ordered something I didn't even want, and waited. Laura showed up exactly on time. I watched her walk in and immediately clocked how comfortable she looked. She wasn't scanning the room like she was nervous or looking for me. She just walked up to the bar like she owned the joint, looked right at me, smiled, and sat down without a word. She didn't even say hi, just ordered a tequila shot for both of us and slid one over like we'd done this before. She was pretty, but in a very put-together way. Like her makeup and outfit and even her laugh felt rehearsed. She talked fast, like she was used to being in charge of conversations. The more we talked, the more I noticed this edge to everything she said. Like everything was just a setup to dunk on someone. She trashed her last 3 dates in under 5 minutes. Said one guy smelled like hardwood floors, and another had the social skills of a traffic cone. I tried to keep up, but she was on this weird speedrun energy. She went through 3 drinks before I'd even finished my second. And then, out of nowhere, she leaned in real close and asked if I wanted to go to the bathroom with her. Not to talk, not to hide. Just flat out said it like it was nothing. I froze. Not because I didn't know what she meant, but because it was so blunt and dead-eyed. There was no flirtation behind it, no smile, just this weird detached tone, like she was asking if I wanted gum. And it wasn't even about me. I realized that while staring at her, she just wanted a reaction. I told her no. Just straight up. No excuse, no fake laugh. Just no. She pulled back and stared at me like I had just thrown her drink in her face. Then she smiled, but not in a fun way. It was this fake white smile that didn't match her eyes at all. She shrugged, said something I couldn't hear over the bar noise, and turned away like I didn't exist. I sat there kind of stunned. I thought maybe she was joking or messing around, but nope. She flagged down the bartender, downed her drink, and then started talking to the guy next to us, some dude in a backwards hat, who looked like he only ate hot wings and lifted weights just for mere selfies. At first I thought she was doing it to make a point, like maybe to show me I missed out. But the more I watched, the more it felt calculated. She leaned into him the exact same way she did with me. Touched his arm, tilted her head, laughed before he even finished a sentence. And then, 10 minutes later, she grabbed his hand and they both walked toward the door without even glancing back. Just like that, I'd sat there for another 20 minutes, like an idiot. The bartender gave me this awkward look, like he knew exactly what happened but didn't want to say anything. I finished my drink in silence, paid for both of ours because apparently I hate money, and left. Outside, it had started to rain. Of course it had. The worst part, I wasn't even mad. I was just weirdly grossed out, like I'd been part of some little experiment she does for fun on slow weekends. It wasn't about getting to know me, or flirting, or even hooking up. It was like she was running a game she'd played 100 times, and I was just tonight's version of guy who says no. The next morning she unmatched me, which was honestly a relief, but I couldn't stop thinking about how fast it all flipped. 1 second we're doing shots and joking about weird baby names. The next I'm watching her leave with a stranger like I never existed. I told my friend about it later and he just said, well, she sounds wild, which is probably the mildest way to describe someone who uses dates like live theater. I still wonder what she even wanted from me, or if she even cared who I was. I haven't been to that bar since, probably never will. Every time someone mentions it, all I can picture is that look she gave me when I said no. Not angry, not sad. Just this smug, empty stare like she already had a backup plan waiting at the bar. And apparently, she did. I was bored when I matched with Richard. That kind of bored where you've scrolled through every short video, watched all the random clips of people cooking tiny meals in tiny kitchens, and you're just lying there like, okay, guess I'll open the apps again. His profile looked normal, if not a little basic. Some guy with a clean haircut, short beard, said he worked in tech, went to the gym, loved dogs. Every other guy, honestly. He had these grainy pics of him hiking and smiling into the sun. Generic, but not creepy. That was enough for me. On a Tuesday night we messaged back and forth for a couple days. It was surface level stuff. Where are you from? Favorite movies? Dumb jokes about pineapple and pizza. He was weirdly polite, like overly polite, the way customer service people talk when they're reading off a script. But I just thought maybe he was shy or awkward online. Not everyone's a great texter. He asked if I wanted to meet up for coffee and I said sure. We picked this indie cafe I like, the one that smells like cinnamon and regret. So I showed up, around 5. The sun was still out but starting to dip, and the patio had this orange glow from the string lights. I sat down with my icy drink and looked around for him. Then this guy walks up. Not the guy from the pictures. He looked nervous, holding his phone in both hands like it might bite him. He said he was Richard, but he wasn't the guy in the photos. He was shorter, darker skinned, completely different hair, and a totally different accent. Not just a little different, like, completely someone else. I just kind of sat there, stunned for a second. I figured maybe he used old pics, or photoshopped ones, which people do. But this wasn't that. This was full-on catfish territory. I didn't freak out right away. I told myself maybe there was some misunderstanding. Maybe it was his cousin's account or something dumb. But then he sat down and started talking like nothing was wrong. Like we'd been friends for years. He told me he was from India, had been living in the city for about 2 years, worked part-time at a logistics company, and was studying computer science at night. All this information was pouring out of him like he'd been practicing the speech. At one point I asked about the photos. He kind of laughed and said people don't swipe on him when he uses his real face. That he tried for months with no matches and then changed his pics and suddenly got results. He wasn't even ashamed about it, just said it like it was no big deal. I should have left right then, honestly. But I stayed. Not because I was interested, but because I was too stunned to move. You ever just sit there watching a situation unfold, knowing it's weird, but your brain hasn't fully caught up? That was me. Then he leaned in a little and got quiet. He said he actually wanted to talk to me about something personal. At this point, I thought maybe he was gonna say he liked me, or that he felt bad for lying or something like that. I braced myself for some awkward confession. Nope. He asked me if I'd be willing to marry him. Not date. Not see where this goes. Literally, marry him. Legal marriage. He said he'd pay me. Not like in a sketchy whisper either, he said. It in the same tone people use when they ask if you want to split dessert. Just super casual. Said he needed a green card and had been looking for someone trustworthy. Told me he could give me 10 grand up front. Another 5 after the paperwork. He already knew the process. Said he had it all figured out. Even had a lawyer contact. I couldn't believe it. Like I just sat there blinking. I laughed at first because I thought maybe he was joking. He wasn't. He pulled out his phone and showed me this note he'd typed out, a whole breakdown of how it'd work. Timeline, fake backstory, what to say during the interviews, how we could fake photos together for social media, even a fake anniversary. It was all there, written like a DIY kit for immigration fraud. I didn't even know what to say. I kept thinking about how he'd chosen me for this. Out of all the people on that app, he'd matched with me using a fake identity. Met me in person, and thought, yeah, this girl might say yes, like I'd just be cool with that. He even said I seemed trustworthy and kind, which I think was supposed to be a compliment. But it just made me feel worse. Like I'd somehow given off this vibe that I'd be down to illegally marry a stranger for cash. The worst part is that he was calm the whole time. Like this wasn't weird or risky or disturbing. Like this was just another version of a casual date night conversation. I asked him why he thought I'd agree to it, and he said people do it all the time. That it's not a big deal. He said I'd get easy money and he'd get to stay in the country. Win-win. I told him I wasn't interested and he nodded. Like he'd expected it, but then added that I should think about it and that he could even bump up the amount if needed. I left right after that. I didn't even finish my drink. I just stood up and walked out of there while he was still scrolling through his phone, probably queuing up the next girl to try this on. I reported him on the app, but who knows if they even saw it. He unmatched me a few hours later anyway. I never heard from him again. For a while after that, I kept wondering how many people he'd tried this with. If anyone had actually said yes. It stuck with me. Not because I was scared or anything, but because of how casual he was about it. Like the whole thing was just a business transaction. No emotion, no shame. Just another item on his to-do list. And that's the weirdest. First date I've ever been on. Never saw it coming. Still can't drink anything from that cafe without thinking about it. So yeah, this one almost ended really bad. I still think about how close I was to just walking into something I probably wouldn't have walked out of. I didn't tell a lot of people about it when it happened, because it just sounded too dumb to be real. But I'm putting it out there now because it still messes with my head sometimes. This happened about 2 years ago, when dating apps were basically just background noise in my life. You know that thing where you're not even looking for anything serious, you just swipe when you're bored and talk to whoever seems interesting for a day or two. That's how I met Anna. Her profile wasn't flashy or anything. Just a couple casual pics of her at a coffee shop, one with a dog, and a short bio that said she was into quiet nights, fast food, and horror movies. Sounded chill, looked normal. We started messaging one evening. She was quick to respond, which I liked. A lot of people on those apps either ghost mid-convo or just send one-word replies forever. But she actually seemed into the conversation. It wasn't deep stuff. Just dumb jokes and complaining about our jobs. She said she worked from home, liked cooking, and was kinda tired of going on dates where people only wanted to play games. All very normal. After like 2 days of texting, she asked if I wanted to come over and hang. Said she'd just picked up a bunch of snacks, had drinks, and was gonna throw on some movies. She dropped her address without me even asking. I hesitated for a second, because meeting someone for the first time at their house is usually not how I do things, but she made it sound like it wasn't a big deal. Said she didn't like crowded places and preferred chilling somewhere quiet. And honestly, I was kinda bored and thought, why not? If it's weird, I could just dip. So I grabbed a hoodie, threw on some shoes, and headed over. The place wasn't super far, like 20 minutes out in this neighborhood I didn't really know that well. Not sketchy exactly, but not somewhere I usually went. It was one of those spots where all the houses look kinda the same, and the street lamps are dim as hell. I got there around 9. The street was quiet, no music, no movement. Her house looked like any other one on the block, beige siding. Tiny porch. One porch light flickering on and off like something out of a horror movie, but whatever. I parked across the street, sat in my car for a sec, just scrolling to kill time, and then walked up. I texted her here, but didn't get a response. I figured maybe she didn't hear it, or was just getting stuff ready. So I walk up to the door, knock once, nothing. Then I knock again, louder this time. The porch light flickered again. That's when the door opened. It wasn't her. It was a guy wearing a ski mask, not like a beanie, or something halfway over his face. Like a full mask, eyes barely visible. He didn't say anything, just stared. And then I saw over his shoulder, 2 more guys inside the living room. One standing near the hallway, and another sitting on a chair like they were waiting for something. One more dude was off to the side by the kitchen, half in the dark. Everything in me just locked up for a second. I wasn't expecting that. I couldn't even speak. Just stood there like an idiot. Then it clicked. This was a setup. I don't know what they were planning exactly, but it wasn't good. No one wears a ski mask indoors for fun. I didn't wait for him to say anything. I just turned and ran. Not even a dramatic movie run. Just full sprint, heart punching my chest, legs barely moving fast enough. I could hear footsteps behind me, but I didn't look back. Got to my car, yanked the door open, jumped in, locked it, and peeled out of that street like I was in a panic video. I don't even remember if I looked for traffic. I was out of that neighborhood in under a minute. Hands shaking, chest tight. Checking my mirrors constantly to see if anyone followed me. No one did. Or if they did, I lost them fast. I parked in a gas station lot 5 minutes away. Sat there trying to catch my breath and just process what the hell had happened. Tried going back through the messages to double-check if there were any red flags. There really weren't. Nothing out of the ordinary. She didn't ask weird questions, didn't talk about money, didn't try to rush anything. Just straight up asked if I wanted to hang, and I said yeah. I tried texting her again. The message didn't go through. She had already unmatched me and blocked me or deleted her profile. Gone, like she never existed. The whole thing was a trap from the start. I must have been picked out randomly, or maybe they do this often. I have no idea. I reported it to the app but never heard anything back, which didn't surprise me. For weeks after that, I kept replaying it. What if I'd stepped inside? What if I hesitated longer? What if my car didn't start? I don't even want to think about what could have happened. I got lucky. That's all it was. Dumb luck. I haven't used dating apps since then. Not seriously anyway. I'll download them out of boredom, but I never meet up with anyone anymore, unless it's in public with other people around. That one night rewired my brain in the worst way, so yeah. That's the last time I go to a stranger's house without knowing them first. I thought it'd just be a chill night with snacks and a movie. Instead, I got a dude in a ski mask opening the door like it was normal. Never again. This was supposed to be just a chill night. One of those nothing special kind of nights where you meet someone for a first date, just to see if there's any vibe at all. I wasn't expecting anything crazy. I had no big hopes or red flags beforehand. Just a normal conversation with a guy named Harry that somehow ended with me questioning my ability to make basic life choices. We matched on Hinge. His pics were all super clean, very influencer. Like sharp lighting, poses that didn't look posed even though you knew they were. One of him in front of a mirror at a hotel, one with a dog, one of him on a rooftop. His bio was short but confident, said he worked in content and consulting, or some weird combo like that. I didn't really care. I just thought he looked good and the convo was decent. Honestly, I was bored and kinda sick of texting people endlessly without meeting. He asked if I wanted to get dinner. Suggested this ramen place downtown that I actually liked, so I was like cool, why not? I got there first. It was busy but not packed. The kind of place with mood lighting and those big heavy menus with too many options. I sat by the window and waited, checking my phone, not really nervous but also wondering what he looked like in person. I kept trying to imagine if he'd show up looking the same as his pics, or if it was gonna be a whole different situation. He walked in about 5 minutes later. Same guy. Looked like his photos, just slightly shorter than I thought. Still good, very put together. He smelled expensive, if that makes sense. Like cologne, that's not too strong but definitely says I have a skincare routine. He smiled, gave me a quick hug, and sat down like he'd done this a million times. We started talking. It was fine. Not amazing, not awkward. The conversation had this weird rhythm though, like he was used to being interviewed or something. Every time I asked him something simple, like how his day was, or what kind of stuff he liked to watch, he'd turn it into this kind of performance answer like it was meant to impress. Then, about 15 minutes in, this girl walks by our table, does a double take, and says his name. She gets all excited and asks if she can take a selfie with him. He laughs and says of course, like it happens all the time. I was kind of confused but thought maybe they knew each other. Then another guy comes over like 5 minutes later and does the same thing. Says he loves his videos and asks for a picture. That's when I asked him if he was famous. He kind of smiled, like he'd been waiting for me to ask. Said he was an influencer, mostly social media stuff, lifestyle content, worked with brands, that kind of thing. I nodded like, okay, cool, but I definitely didn't recognize him and I watch a lot of random stuff online. He said he'd been getting more attention lately, which explained the random fans coming over, I guess. It still felt a little off though. The way people were reacting wasn't like actual fans. It was more like curiosity. So while he went to the bathroom, I did what anyone would do. I Googled him. His name brought up all his socials right away. Instagram, YouTube, Chicky. He had a solid following. Not mega famous, but big enough. Most of it was basic influencer content. Fitness tips, morning routines, reaction videos, the usual stuff. But then I scrolled down and saw article links. Actual news stuff, turns out. He was trending for a totally different reason. There was an ongoing court case tied to him. Like actual legal stuff. I won't say the exact charges, but it was serious. He was being accused of some messed up behavior from when he worked with a couple smaller influencers. Stuff about coercion, manipulation, and a whole lot of messy, shady stuff that didn't look good, no matter how you framed it. There were tweets, testimonies, and some leaked screenshots floating around. It wasn't just one person. It was multiple people talking about how he used his online status to control or pressure people. And the worst part was, the trial hadn't even ended yet. It was still unfolding. And there he was, across the table from me, acting like nothing was going on. I sat there trying not to look totally stunned. My hands were shaking a little and I didn't even realize I was gripping my phone super tight until he came back and I dropped it by accident. He sat back down like everything was chill, kept eating, kept talking. Like he wasn't low-key internet. Infamous at that exact moment. I barely spoke after that. I just nodded and smiled and waited for the moment I could bounce without making it obvious I was freaking out. He must have noticed something was off because he asked if I was feeling okay, and I just said I was tired. I paid for my half early, told him I had to get up early for work, and got out of there so fast it probably looked rude. When I got home, I sat on my bed scrolling for hours, reading every thread, every article, every video that mentioned him. I felt weird, like I had brushed up against something way darker than I thought. He hadn't done anything to me, but just knowing who he was and what he was involved in made my skin crawl. And the way he acted like it didn't matter, like it wasn't serious. That was what really stuck with me. I didn't block him right away. I kept the convo open for a bit, half expecting him to say something that would make it make sense. He never did. Just sent a message the next day asking when I wanted to hang out again. I blocked him after that now. Every time I see someone with a ring light in their room or a perfect little coffee pour reel online, I wonder what's going on behind the feed. Some people really build a whole brand around being chill and trustworthy, while they're out here doing stuff that ruins actual lives. And yeah, I know, it was just dinner, just one date. But that's all it takes sometimes. One weird night, one wrong person, and suddenly you're realizing just how fast things can go from normal to messed up. I was lucky I didn't find out the hard way. That was the first and last time I ever dated someone with a blue check. Alright, so this is easily the most uncomfortable date I've ever been on. And that's saying a lot, because I've had some weird ones. Like I once went out with someone who brought her mom. But this one hit a different level of chaos. It started super normal. Her name was Sally. We matched on a dating app, had decent back and forths for a few days. Nothing too deep, but enough to keep the vibe going. She was into film photography, worked part-time at a bookstore, had a golden retriever. Seemed cool. Chill energy, nothing over the top. She suggested this little pizza place with patio seating, which I thought was perfect. Not too loud, not too fancy. The night started okay. I got there first, grabbed a table outside, since it was one of those warm, breezy evenings that make you forget the rest of the week sucked. She showed up a few minutes later, wearing this vintage-looking jacket and bright red sneakers. And I thought, all right, she's got style. She gave me a hug, smiled, seemed excited. For a second, I thought this could be one of those rare good ones. We ordered drinks and started talking about random stuff. Music, travel plans, what we'd do if we had $1,000,000. She laughed easily, had that kind of expressive face that made everything she said a little more dramatic in a fun way. I was actually enjoying myself. We got into this deep dive about 90s movies and how nobody makes rom-coms the same anymore. It was all going smooth until about 30 minutes in. That's when he walked in. I didn't know who he was at first. Just some tall dude with slicked back hair and this really obvious "I think I'm hot" look on his face. He was with another girl who looked like she was dressed for a club even though it was just a pizza spot. They sat at the table right next to ours, like literally 6 feet away. And that's when I saw Sally freeze for a second. She tried to play it off, but her eyes went glassy, and her voice dropped a little when she asked if I could switch seats with her. So I did, confused but not wanting to make a thing out of it. Then I noticed the tall guy looking right at her and smirking, and she was pretending not to see him. It clicked. This was her ex. I didn't know how long they'd been apart. But based on the way they were fake ignoring each other while very obviously existing in each other's peripheral vision, it hadn't been long. She kept picking at her food, not really eating. Then suddenly she was asking me about my last relationship in this loud voice, and saying things like how people don't know what they have until it's gone, and how mature men are rare. It felt like she wasn't even talking to me anymore, just talking loud enough for him to hear. At first I tried to keep it together, nodding and smiling like I wasn't in the middle of an emotional tennis match between two exes, using new people as props. But it got weirder. He and his date started being obnoxiously affectionate, laughing loudly, touching each other constantly. It felt forced and performative, and I could tell she was watching every second of it from the corner of her eye. Then, she just kinda lost it. Not full breakdown, but her voice cracked and she looked down and I could see her eyes tearing up. She said she was sorry, that she didn't expect to see him there, that it was just a lot, and how she thought she was over it but clearly wasn't. She wiped her face and then immediately tried to flip the mood. Started asking me questions, like what my biggest fantasy was or if I believed in love at first sight. She was doing this thing where she was trying to be seductive and flirty while clearly on the verge of crying. It was heartbreaking and uncomfortable at the same time. And then she leaned in real close and said something like how she thought I looked better than her ex anyway, and I could tell it wasn't even meant for me. She wanted him to hear that. She wanted him to react. But he didn't. He just kept acting like he was too into his new girl to notice, even though he definitely heard every word. At this point, I felt like I was just sitting in the middle of a breakup sequel I never signed up to be a part of. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to just get up and leave, but I felt bad. Like, she clearly wasn't trying to ruin the night, but she also wasn't in a place where she should have been on a date. I was just the unlucky bystander. Eventually, she excused herself to the bathroom and stayed there for a while. Long enough that our server came over twice and asked if we wanted anything else. I said no, just asked for the check. I paid and sat there awkwardly, and when she came back, she looked more collected but also kinda embarrassed. She apologized. Again, said the night didn't go how she wanted it to. And I just said yeah, it's all right. We walked out together and she gave me a hug, said maybe we could talk again sometime. I didn't say yes or no, just kind of nodded and left. That was it. I never heard from her again. Didn't reach out, didn't block her, just let it fade. The whole night was like sitting in the splash zone of someone else's emotional disaster. I don't blame her entirely. Emotions are messy and breakups screw with people in weird ways. But yeah, that's a date I'll never forget. And not for any good reason. Definitely not the vibe I expected when I put on cologne and ironed my shirt that night. I was already kind of on the fence about dating apps again. It always felt like recycling the same 5 conversations with people who looked better in blurry selfies than in real life. But I was bored. I had nothing better going on, and honestly, I was just curious. So when this guy Sean messaged me, I figured I'd give it a shot. He seemed chill, not overly try-hard, which was refreshing. Had a couple mirror selfies, nothing too wild, and he actually messaged me something other than, "Hey." We talked for a few days about random stuff. He said he worked in retail, was into photography, and liked houseplants, which felt oddly specific and kinda sweet. He wasn't super deep or anything, but he was funny in a dry kind of way. I figured, why not meet up? We agreed to meet at this mid-range Korean spot downtown. Not fancy, but not too casual either. One offered a few places, and that's the one. He jumped on. Cool. Then, the morning of the date, things already started to feel a little off. He messaged me saying his Uber was going to be insane expensive, and asked if I could cover it. He said he'd pay me back later, that he was just low on cash because he'd spent more than expected getting ready for the date. I was like, what does that even mean? Then he sent me this breakdown of what he'd spent. He literally listed it out, like a receipt. Cologne, haircut, a new shirt, and jeans. Said he bought it all just to look nice for me, and that it would only be fair if I could pitch in since he went the extra mile. I honestly thought he was joking at first. Like, maybe this was his weird way of flirting. But then he sent his PayPal. I should have backed out right there. But I was already ready, and part of me didn't want to deal with the awkwardness of canceling. I also figured, alright, if it's that big of a deal, fine, it's just a ride. I sent the money and told myself I'd just get a drink and bounce early if it got weird. I got to the restaurant first. He showed up maybe 15 minutes later, and he was okay looking. Not horrible, but not quite the version of him I had in my head. He looked tired, like he'd been on the bus all day, but I brushed it off. He smiled, gave me a quick hug, and we sat down. He started off friendly, I'll give him that. He talked a lot though, and I mean a lot. Mostly about himself. About how hard he worked, how people didn't take him seriously, how expensive everything was, and how dating was a financial strain on men. I kept sipping my water and nodding like I was still mentally present, but I was already halfway out the door in my head. Then came the food. I wasn't super hungry, so I ordered a simple tofu stew and a soda. He got the most expensive item on the menu. Beef short ribs, with all the sides, and a cocktail. Halfway through eating, he casually mentioned that we'd split the bill. Now, I'm not one of those people who expects the other person to pay all the time. But this guy had already asked me to cover his Uber, and now he wanted to go 50-50ths after ordering triple what I did. I gave him this look, like, are you serious right now? But he just kept eating, like he didn't notice. It got worse. He started talking about his finances in this weirdly transactional way. How he was trying to be smarter with money. How he believed modern relationships should be partnerships where both parties contribute equally. And how he thought emotional labor counted too. I didn't even know what that meant in this context. Then he circled back to the clothes and said, again, that he'd appreciate if I helped cover them, since he only bought them for this night. I was sitting there with my spoon midair, just blinking. I could feel secondhand embarrassment crawling up my spine. He was serious. Like truly thought this date was some business agreement. The waiter came with the check. He pulled out his phone, looked at the total, and then actually asked me to Venmo him my half down to the exact cent. Didn't even round it off. I paid, mostly just to get it over with, and stood up as fast as I could. We walked out, and he asked if I wanted to share another Uber back, and could I order it again because his bank was acting up. I told him I had other plans and walked toward the train station. He said something about messaging me later, and I didn't even turn around. On the train home, I blocked him before the second stop. He never paid me back for the ride there. And honestly, I didn't care. That little money was the cost of learning never to go out with someone who sends you a digital invoice for their outfit. I went home, took off my makeup, and ordered fries, because I was still hungry. That was it. One of the most awkward, uncomfortable nights I've had. And not because anything wild or scary happened. Just that it was so deeply off. So weirdly calculated. The way he treated the date like a receipt swap instead of, I don't know, a normal human interaction. No connection, no vibe. Just financial. Audits and PayPal requests, so yeah. If someone starts talking about reimbursements before the date even begins, don't go. Just stay home. Order your own food, wear sweatpants, and avoid the madness. I wasn't expecting anything crazy when I matched with Nadia on that app. Just the usual small talk, maybe some laughs, and who knows, maybe a second date if things clicked. Honestly, I was just hoping for a chill night out. No pressure, no weird drama. So we set up to meet at this kinda laid-back bar I'd never been to before. I was running a bit late because work dragged on, but whatever. She said she'd be there around 7 when I walked in. I spotted her right away. Nadia was one of those people who looked like she stepped out of a movie. Dark hair, bold eyes, and this kind of energy that made you pay attention without even trying. She had that confident walk, the kind that kinda commands the room, even when it's just a few scattered people sitting at tables. We started talking, and it was easy at first. She was funny in a dry way, telling stories about her messy job and the ridiculous people she deals with. I was cracking up more than once. Everything felt normal for a while. I thought, yeah, this could be cool. Then, somewhere around our second round of drinks, Nadia leaned in a little, looked me dead in the eyes, and asked when I was going to propose to her. Just like that. No warning, no setup, just straight into it. I laughed. It caught me completely off guard. Like, no one asks something like that on a first date unless they're messing around. But I figured maybe she was joking or trying to see how I'd react. So I laughed again, trying to keep it light. But that was a mistake. Her face flipped. Instantly. That smile disappeared, replaced by this sharp, cold look I wasn't ready for. She said I was wasting her time. Just like that, no beating around the bush. It was like she expected this from me. Like I should have had some plan too. Propose. Or at least say the right thing. The whole bar seemed to get louder in that moment. The music. The clinking glasses. Even the people talking nearby. It all felt way too loud and way too close. I could tell some folks were glancing over, watching this awkward scene unfold. I didn't know whether to laugh it off or just get out of there. I tried to explain that it was a first date, that we barely knew each other, that marriage was a big step and maybe we should take things slow. But she wasn't having any of it. She said she didn't have time for games or guys who weren't serious. She started talking about how she'd wasted too much time on people who didn't know what they wanted. The way she said it made it clear she wasn't just talking about me. This was something she carried with her. I glanced around the room again. Some people were giving us the what's going on here look. Some were whispering. I felt like I was under a microscope, like I was the punchline of a bad joke I didn't even know I was in. The whole vibe shifted from casual and fun to tense and weird really fast. Nadia was still going on about the future. About how she wanted someone who was ready, who wasn't wasting time with small talk or silly games. She said she was done with people who didn't know what they wanted and just wasted her time. Honestly, I was trying not to freak out. I wasn't sure if she was serious or just putting on a show, but either way, it felt intense. I kept thinking back to the beginning of the night. We had been laughing and talking about random stuff, and now suddenly this huge expectation was hanging over everything. It was like she'd come in with a checklist, and I was failing every single point at some point. I realized she wasn't just mad or disappointed. There was something darker there, like a kind of bitterness I hadn't seen before. She wanted this big commitment right away, and if I didn't give it to her, then I was the problem. When she said I was wasting her time, I felt this weird mix of confusion and pressure. I wasn't prepared for a relationship that heavy right out of the gate. It wasn't just a bad date anymore. It was like being pulled into a serious, emotional drama I hadn't signed up for. The more she talked about marriage and plans and being serious, the more I felt like I was sinking. I didn't know how to respond without making things worse. I didn't want to hurt her. But I also didn't want to pretend like I was ready to pop the question after a couple hours at a bar. Finally, I just paid the bill and told her I had to go. She didn't seem surprised. If anything, it felt like she expected me to walk out. I left feeling kind of relieved, but also rattled. The whole thing was so surreal. I kept replaying it in my head, trying to figure out if I missed some kind of sin or if she was just out there with some kind of plan that didn't involve me at all. Walking home, I realized how weird it was that someone could come in with such heavy expectations on a first date, like a pressure cooker ready to blow up if things didn't go their way. I wasn't mad or anything. I was just confused and honestly kind of freaked out by how quickly things turned. It made me think about how sometimes people show up carrying a whole lifetime of stuff with them. Stuff that hits you before you even get a chance to know them. And sometimes, that stuff can be overwhelming or even scary. Nadia wasn't a bad person, I guess. But that night, she was something else entirely. She was like a test I wasn't ready to take. And when I didn't pass, everything came crashing down. I'm not even sure what she wanted from me exactly. Maybe she was looking for some kind of security or proof that I was the one right away. Or maybe she just wanted to see if I'd freak out. Whatever it wasn't what I signed up for. So yeah, that was my first date, with Nadiatically not what I expected, and something I won't forget anytime soon. It wasn't scary in the usual way, but it was this heavy, weird pressure that made me realize dating isn't always just about good times and laughs. Sometimes, it's about surviving the unexpected. And honestly, after that night, I figured I'd just stick to simpler dates for a while.